Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Vice Chancellor, Universiti, Teknologi, PETRONAS, the representative of the Menteri Besar of Perak, academic staff, students, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to the University for this invitation to talk on a subject that is of interest to every one of us. It is about leadership. We need leaders. Whenever people gather in any group, small or big, they need somebody to lead. And without leading, without a leader, they cannot achieve any degree of progress or success. For example, we participate sometimes in a tug of war. It's called a tug of war, almost as if it is a war of sorts. In a tug of war, we have two teams pulling a rope from each end. Now, for the side to win, it must have a leader who coordinates the pulling efforts of his team. If there is no leader, the chances of winning are very, very light or very few. Let's take, for example, a team of 10 people, each weighing 100 kilos, pulling against a team of 10 people with each weighing 50 kilos, half that of their opponents. Now, is it possible for the team of very light people to pull against such heavy people? It is possible if the team coordinates under a leader who will ensure that all of them will pull together, perhaps break and rest and then pull again in a kind of rhythmic way led by the leader. Now, if the heavyweights, the 100 kilo team of 10 people, if they are not well coordinated, if they pull at the wrong time without pulling in unison, then they cannot make use of their heavy weight in order to give strength to their team. If anybody pulls at any time he likes, he pauses, and then when he pulls, the others are not pulling. In such a situation, it is possible for the team of very light people to win in the tug of war. It illustrates the importance of leadership, because leaders provide coordination, and also the leaders ensure that everyone does the same thing at the same time to maximize their strength. Now I would like to go back to Malay history. We all read about the history of the Malay states. We all know about how the Sultanate of Malacca lost to the Portuguese in 1511. Now the Portuguese came here with a small number of people. Of course, they were trained. They were a small army of sorts, maybe about 200 or 300 of them. They had just traveled over the seas and, traveling in sailing boats across the sea is not the most pleasant thing to do. Most of them would have just recovered from seasickness, for example. On the other hand, the Sultan of Malacca had a huge army, numbering thousands, equipped with elephants and whatever weapons that they may have at that time. And we know that this small army brought by the Portuguese was able to defeat the huge army of the Sultan of Malacca. And in 1511, Malacca became Portuguese territory. Why has this happened? I have always asked this question whenever I think about politics in Malaysia, and I realize that it is about leadership. The Sultan and his people led an army without really leading. Until now, we don't know who was the general in command. Was it the Sultan? Was it his children? Or the Bendahara? Or whoever? Who was the commanding officer of the Sultan's army, which is a big army equipped with elephants? But who was the leader? Until now, we are not quite sure. We are not quite sure who was the leader. And because of that, their defense of Malacca was disorganized. On the other hand, the Portuguese came with a well-structured unit, fighting unit. They have, of course, their admirals, they have various grades of officers, and they have the common soldier. And the line of command is very clear. It is from top to bottom, from the general down to the colonels, down to the lieutenant colonels, to the captains, to the lieutenant, to the sergeant, to the corporals, and then to the soldiers. They were very well organized, and they were led by one person, not by, not fully recognized leaders, but by one person. It was under the command of the admiral. At that time, it was Albuquerque, and he directed the operation, the fight against the Sultan's army, and he defeated this large army because he was better organized. He knows the line of command, he knows the command words, and whatever he says is understood right to the bottom, to the ordinary line soldier. I don't know what are the command words used by the Sultan's army, but until now, the command words are still not very clear. We adopted the command words of the British in our present modern army. But at the time of the Sultan of Malacca, the great Sultanate, we are not sure what were the command words. And as a result, their movements were not coordinated. The Portuguese were well coordinated. They know what they have to do. They were trained, and they know who their leaders were at each level. Not just at the very top, but at each level, who were in charge. And because of that, they were able to defeat the army of the Sultan fairly easily. And this story, this experience is repeated over and over again throughout that period when the Europeans decided to, create their own empire by conquering all the countries that cannot fight against them. Countries like India, with his Mughal emperor, with his many huge armies, and people lost to the British. Indonesia was subjugated by the Dutch, the Portuguese, the Spanish took over the Philippines, and all over the world we see these Europeans invading and defeating huge armies of the local people and creating their empire. It is all about leadership. Without leaders, without a single purpose, without coordination, I don't think the small armies coming from Europe, and Europe has a small population, even smaller in those days than now, they were able to conquer the world with very few people. I mean, imagine India at that time already had hundreds of millions of people, but they were defeated by General Clive, and became a part of the British Empire, ruling this huge continent with only a few people. And if you examine why is it that they were able to do so, the answer is leadership. Now it is clear that leaders are necessary. Now in the history of humanity, there has always been a need for leaders. Since humans are gregarious, they like to live in groups. Every time they live in group, they need somebody to lead them. From the system of chiefs, of tribes, evolved the monarchy. The monarchs were supposed to be leaders, of course, because they would lead their country. Sometimes they would lead their country into wars even, with them leading in front. Nowadays, of course, generals lead from 3,000 miles behind. But in those days, to lead an army means to be in front, to lead properly. And because the leaders are good, they win. But sometimes the leaders are not so good, of course, they will lose. Everything depends upon leadership. The great leaders who emerged throughout history, for example, is about leadership. The Prophet of Islam, Mohamad was a great leader, a man who was able to convert the ignorant Arabs, the Jahiliyyah, to build a great civilization that expanded from China to Spain in the West. That is leadership. Of course, following that, there were other normal people who became leaders in history. We know about Genghis Khan, we know about Peter the Great, we know about Napoleon, and a host of others. These were great leaders. And under these great leaders, things undergo a radical change. The ignorant Arabs, the Jahiliyyah Arabs, became a great nation, spreading the word to the whole world at that time, to build a great Muslim civilization, all led by one man, the Prophet of Islam. Of course, later on, there were such great leaders as Genghis Khan. The tribes, the Mongol tribes were divided into very many groups, fighting against each other. But Genghis Khan, through his personality and his bravery, was able to gather all the troops, all the different tribes together and build a great nation, the Mongol nation. And Genghis Khan, as you know, conquered the whole of Central Asia, extending into Eastern Europe and into China. The only difference between Genghis Khan and the Europeans is that when they conquer, they don't rule. They allow the locals to rule. And in the case of the Mongols, they actually adopted the religion of the people in that place. So today you see leaders of Turkey. Some of them are of Mongol origin. The Mughal emperors of India were Mongols. Kublai Khan, who united the whole of China, was a Mongol. All these are examples of great leaders, people with the capacity to bring people together and to arrange them or to administer them so that they become effective as a force. Effective in war and effective in the administration of their countries. These are great leaders because they understand what leadership means. What is leadership? Leadership means being able to provide guidance to whoever it is that become the followers. How do we recognize a leader? Well, as I said just now, monarchs, kings, and rajas were at one time leaders. And these leaders probably started as just chiefs in their own tribe. Later on, because of their strong leadership, they were able to unite many different tribes to build a nation or a state and to rule that state. And the ruler, of course, is the leader. But the system depends, or rather was slightly corrupted, because instead of choosing the best person to become a leader, the system began to deteriorate into leadership based on family ties or succession. The son of the king becomes the next king, and the son of the next king becomes the next king after that. The question as to whether the new monarchs are capable or not does not arise anymore. They build a great mystery about their own person, and because of that, they were honored and obeyed because they come from that family or this family. Over time, of course, some of the descendants of these rulers were not really good leaders, and they failed. They began to enjoy life and forget about their need to lead the people. They were so powerful, they amassed a lot of wealth, and they have a grand life, but they forget that leaders have to lead. You have to lead the people. When you think of yourself as a leader with privileges, and you forget your duty to lead, then obviously your followers will begin to question whether they need this leader by hereditary, these hereditary leaders or not. And so it was that the French decided to revolt against their monarch. We know about the French Revolution. The French Revolution happened simply because the ruler, as a leader, had forgotten his role as a leader. He was not uniting his people, his followers, not giving them the kind of things they expect from life, not giving them good leadership. And so eventually the people rose. And even as the people rose against their leader, they need a leader from among themselves. And of course, a few leaders emerged from all revolutions. The leaders will then try to unseat the hereditary leader because the hereditary leader has failed. But in order to do that, the leader must have a kind of quality that allows him to become a leader, to lead people. A leader must have ideas. A leader must be brave. A leader must take risks. A leader must, stretch out his neck to be chopped off if he fails. A leader must understand the needs of his followers. What do the followers want? Is it independence? Is it a better life? Or whatever it is. So we find eventually that the monarchy system in Europe was thrown out and replaced with republics, going back to the public to find a leader. And then, how do you find a leader from among so many people? That becomes a problem. Some people emerge and assume the role of leaders, but it's not very satisfactory. So eventually they evolve or they design a system of going back to the people and letting the people determine who their leader should be. And that is what we call democracy. In a democracy, the people choose the leader and the leader will then lead them. The belief is that the people would know who should be their leader. Obviously, they would choose the man who is best qualified to become a leader. And the democratic process, of course, would enable the people to choose who should be their leader. Unfortunately, initially, of course, it worked. They chose the best man, the man with the best capacity to lead, to become their leader, giving him titles like presidents or chairman or prime ministers for that matter. This is the people's right and the people's choice to choose the best man to become their leader. But over time, democracy begins to deteriorate, like all human ideas. Over time, the idea becomes corrupted. New things get thrown in which affects the system. And in the case of democracy, we find today, after determining that the leader should be the person who leads the majority of the people, because you can't get everybody to agree, so you decide that, okay, anybody getting the support of 50% or more of the people should become the leader. It's a good idea. It enables us to determine who should become a leader. And in order to do this, we have political parties forming all over. But then the system is sometimes corrupted by people who do not think about whether the leader is capable of leading or not. You choose a leader because you like him. You choose a leader because he is of the same race, the same tribe, and the same religion. Not the best person, but you want somebody that you are comfortable with. And the people you are comfortable with would be people who understand you, who are of the same tribe, the same race, or the same religion. So the choice now is not based on the capability of the ability of the person involved, your candidate. The choice now is based on your loyalty to your race, to your ideology, to your religion, to your tribe. And when you base the choice of a leader not on his capability, but because you like him, because he is from your own group, then you are likely to choose the wrong leader. The leader who is chosen not because he has the capacity to lead, but because of your loyalty to your own group. That is what we are seeing today in many countries, including in Malaysia. We don't choose the best leader. We choose because we belong to this party or that party, this race or that race, this religion or that religion. And we are likely to choose. Sometimes we are right. We choose the right leader. Sometimes we make mistakes and we choose the wrong leader. And of course, the wrong leader cannot provide the kind of leadership that you need. What is the kind of leadership that you need? When the right kind of leader is the one who is able to marshal, to gather everybody to become his followers, to accept him as a leader. He should be a person who has a lot of ideas on how to solve problems. He comes up with ways in order to achieve progress, for example. He must know more than his followers. If he is of average capacity and is no better than his followers, he will not last very long as a leader. He must be superior, not in terms of dignity and things like that, but in terms of ability to solve problems. Because the community is always faced with problems. No matter how big or how small, they must have problems and there must be conflict between them. But the problems should be resolved by a leader. A capable leader must be able to solve the problem, provide leadership with new ideas, define the direction that his followers should go, define the objective, the target. That is the role of the leader. Therefore, he must be not of average intelligence, but he must have something more than that. He can see things better than his followers. If he can see what is going to happen in the future, that is even better. Because knowing the dangers coming, then he will be able to make preparation. Knowing that his people wants development, he would know how to achieve development. That is a leader. A leader who is merely a leader by name, but has got no idea about where they should go, in what direction they should go, what are the things needed, then obviously he is going to fail. Of course, in a world where there are conflicts and wars, we need somebody, not necessarily a general, we need a leader who prepares the country to meet the exigencies of violence, wars. What does he do? Obviously, he must have a very good force, a very disciplined force, led by very disciplined officers, equipped with the right weapons, drilled in the ways to fight a war. When the leader knows that his country is in danger, then he has to make this preparation. Alternatively, a good leader would use diplomacy, for example, in order to avoid having to face a war. Instead of spending huge sums of money on weapons, on big military forces, the leader can, through diplomacy, ensure that he has friends around. The enemies will become his friends, who will not attack him, and he would be saving the nation from having to expend so much money on armed forces. So that is a leader. He has ideas. He is brave. He is willing to take risks. He is willing to be up there in front to take the full brunt of the attacks. Now, today, we are living in very challenging times. We are faced with technological development which we never dreamt of before, which never thought of before. Today we can communicate with everyone merely by taking a small instrument from your pocket and you can communicate. You can communicate with everyone. Of course, people who are not, who do not have good intentions also can have this small instrument. And they will use it in order to, well, to achieve their own objective, which may not be good. And you will have to learn how to handle this attack coming to you from every direction. No longer, for example, can we say, let us censor this book, let us censor this magazine. It is a lot of lies directed at us and exposing us to a lot of problems, etc. In those days, we censor magazine, we censor the films that are shown in the cinema, and at one time we thought that we'll have only one TV station, one radio station, which is controlled by the government. That was the way that leaders dealt with before there was the new information technology, the advances that we see today. Today, leaders have to handle a much more intelligent population. Now, if the people are not so intelligent, they don't question you very much. They will follow you, and they will be very loyal to you, especially if you give them money, for example. But today, we find the people in this country and in the rest of the world have a higher rate of intelligence than before. They question, they ask questions, they want to know why. Why do you do this? They will point out to you that what we have done is wrong. It has brought bad results. They will question. And a leader needs to be able to handle these constant intellectual attacks against the leader. If he is not capable of dealing with such attacks, then obviously he will lose his position as a leader. So a leader must understand technology, not in detail, but understand the effects of technology, the ability of people to actually face the leader and question him every day on the Facebook, on the internet, WhatsApp, and all these things have now become very common. Everybody has access to this ability. People have become very powerful. They are no longer weak people living in the villages, not knowing what's happening outside the village even. Today, although we may be Malaysians, we are also world citizens. The whole world is where we live in, and we have access to the rest of the world. We know what people are thinking in America, in Europe, in Japan, in China. We know in detail their thoughts. And therefore we are much more intelligent, much more critical of things. Now a leader of today must face with a very intelligent group of followers. Of course, if he fails to satisfy his followers, they will become his opponents. And that will bring greater problem for the leader, and he may even lose his leadership. It is not enough for a leader to be charismatic. That is to say, he is a popular guy. Why is he popular? Because he shakes your hand. Because he is nice. He kisses the babies and things like that. Nowadays, that's not enough. We are dealing with very intelligent people, university educated. When I went to university, I was one of 7 Malays who went to the university. But today, everybody goes to the university. If you go up to the school level, SPM and the like, you'll never get a job. Everybody has got a university degree now. Beyond that, they are all doctors. So many people are now doctors that I lose my identity as a doctor. I thought that doctors cure people's illness, but these doctors, please don't go and see them when you are sick. They are doctors, they are PhDs, not MDs. So we have so many doctors to deal with. Dealing with one doctor is bad enough, but having to deal with a whole room full of doctors is very, very difficult. But a leader must learn that he is living in a new environment, an environment of intellectuals, of people with university and post-university education, able to think for themselves, able to question you, to analyze what you have done, to find faults with what you have done, and to enunciate, to tell you, look, you are wrong. So for a leader to be told by his so-called followers or the people whom he wants to have to support him, makes life very difficult for a leader, which is why I resigned from being the Prime Minister. Before this alternative media came around, just in time. But beyond that, a leader must have the skills to administer his followers, to gather them, to consolidate their strength, so as to be able to oppose those who challenge him. That is also the need for a leader. It's not just a question of winning elections. You know, sometimes we win elections not because we are very clever, but because, well, these people think that you are of the same race, the same religion, the same culture, and you speak my language, so I choose you. But once you're up there as a leader, things change. Because now you are faced with problems that you must solve. And if you fail to solve those problems, you will very soon lose your leadership. And you see throughout the world how often people have been ousted from being leaders. Not only that, they also have to behave themselves. When you are a very private person, you can do what you like. Nobody cares. But if you are a leader, the slightest mistake you make, the slightest act which is not morally correct, you will be condemned, criticized, and thrown out. So you have to behave yourself as a leader. You know, I realized this when I became a leader, when I was Minister of Education long, long ago. This nice government provided me with a security escort. Anywhere I go, the security man is behind me. I wanted to do bad things, but this man is around. I had to behave because I never know when he is going to tell somebody about my bad behavior. So when you become a leader, you also have to behave. You have to be very correct in the manner you conduct your life, your relationship with your own family, with your wife or wives. All this will be taken into account. So a leader must be morally correct. If you indulge in something that is not correct, that is not approved of, that is a sin, you will not last long as a leader. So apart from having to have full knowledge of modern technology and the capacities of this technology, you also have to be a very good person, not indulging in the things that others can indulge in. You have to make that sacrifice. If you are not prepared to make that sacrifice, you cannot be a leader. Because today, a leader is in full view of the whole world. You do something wrong, they will publish in the paper about what you have done. Of course, knowing that they can pull you down, they can also tell lies about you, so as to bring you down. This also a leader needs to learn how to handle. Well, during my time, I was called a dictator. Now, I know it is not true. I'm a very nice man. I'm not a dictator. But they build up a story that this Fir'aun is now running the camp. And in one of the Facebook entries in the Facebook or somebody, he stated that I am a billionaire with $4 billion stolen from the government. Before such things, he may entertain that idea, but he cannot tell people about that idea. But now the whole country has to contend with this news that I am a billionaire. And I have to face this problem. What do I do? But basically, of course, if you are really not a billionaire, you can tell them, I'm not a billionaire. But this kind of attacks also is now directed at the leaders. And if they don't know how to handle these attacks, they will also fail as a leader. So as you can see, a leader needs multiple skills. The skill to be accepted as a leader, to stay on as a leader, to have the skill to carry out the work of a leader, to have ideas and solutions to the problems of your followers, to understand technology for a modern leader, to understand the capacity of new technologies, to make use of these new technologies, and to understand how to fight against the abuses of these technologies. So a leader must have multiple capabilities. If if the system is going to work, if you are a leader in a democratic country, you must have multiple skills. But leaders, of course, are not always at the top. At various levels, there will be leaders. You may be a leader in your office. That also requires you to have better skills than all the others in the office. You may be the CEO. You may be the, the other ranks that they hold in the business sector. You must have the skills. Without the skills, at that level, you will not become a leader. But of course, right as you mount the ladder to become leader with greater function, greater power, greater skills will be needed. And you must also remember that you cannot afford to abuse your position as a leader. We talk a lot about corruption. You know, some people assume that all leaders are corrupt. They must be corrupt because if I am in that position, I would take bribes. So on the basis of what he would do, should he become the prime minister, then he assumes that the prime minister must be corrupt. All prime ministers are corrupt. That includes me. So these are the problems that he will be faced with. And the best solution to that, of course, is not to be corrupt. To deny yourself, to dedicate yourself to your work and forget about personal wealth and position. So as you can see, you need to have many skills, many moral values in order to be a leader. And it is, of course, difficult to find people with all these assets. Most people have got some weaknesses. For example, if they are followed by their security too much, you can always tell the security, please, today I don't want you. I'm going somewhere. And if you do that often enough, the security will tell people, look, this man is going somewhere, and always tells us not to secure him. So that too is something that may work against you. So I've said quite a lot of things about leadership in modern times and in the past. You need to know the past because you need to make a comparison as to the past. In the past, you have absolute kings, absolute monarchs who can do what they like, even kill you without trial. In the past, kings did that. But today, prime ministers and presidents cannot say that, well, he's opposed to me, please put him under ISA, no more ISA. So their leaders are not so safe now as they were before. So we have to deal with changes within our society, changes which are in terms of moral, in terms of values, and changes in terms of technology, in terms of the wider environment. You are not a leader in a small group anymore. You are a leader of a country. Therefore, you have to think about how you should satisfy a whole nation if you are a leader at that level. And this is, of course, very difficult for the leader. We all have weaknesses. But if you want to be a leader for a longer time, curb the weaknesses. Stop abusing your position. Then you will stay as a leader. So I will stop there because I believe you are going to have some question and answers. I hope I can answer your question. Thank you very much.